You know how you can drive a route you've taken 100 times, say your evening commute, and suddenly you're pulling into your driveway, putting the car in park, and you realize you have absolutely no memory of the last 3 miles.
Oh yeah, the classic phenomenon of highway hypnosis.
Right.
You are, physically moving forward, your hands are on the wheel, you're stopping at red lights, but your conscious brain is completely checked out. You are just coasting on default programming.
You are entirely on autopilot. And I mean, it works fine if nothing unexpected happens on the road. But think about what happens when we put our spiritual lives on autopilot.
That's a dangerous game.
It really is. We just go through the motions, maybe reading a few verses of scripture, sitting in a pew, expecting to arrive at this destination of peace and purpose. But we aren't actually actively driving. We're just expecting the vehicle to do the work.
And coasting spiritually usually means we're slowly drifting off course without even realizing it. Because, well, life really offers a straight, empty road.
Yeah, for sure.
There are constant detours, storms, and obstacles that require deliberate, conscious steering.
Which is exactly why today's deep dive into our source material is so vital. We are looking at a transcript of a spiritual address.
Specifically, it's a sacrament meeting talk.
Right, which for those who might not know, is a congregational address focused on the weekly renewing of spiritual commitments, and it draws on some incredibly rich teachings and real-life stories from Liahona magazine, which is a global publication for the faith that focuses heavily on the lived experience of believers.
It's very grounded material.
Very. And our mission today is completely tactical. We are taking these abstract, lofty spiritual concepts and translating them into practical, everyday habits. So let's unpack this.
Let's do it. What makes this source material so compelling to me is how it bridges the massive gap between passive belief, just sitting in the passenger seat, and active daily application.
It's not just a theoretical lecture.
Exactly. It outlines a framework to elevate your spirituality. But more importantly, it pairs that framework with 5 highly specific daily training exercises. It treats spiritual growth not as an accidental byproduct of living, but as a deliberate practice skill.
I love that. So let's get into the mechanics of this. Because the text emphasizes that being a disciple requires consistent effort starting from the inside out.
Right.
Before we can change what we are doing in the world or how we are interacting with our community, we have to recalibrate our own internal compass. And the very first practice the source introduces revolves around cultivating a profoundly humble heart.
And humility is a word with a lot of baggage, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
We often conflate it with having low self-esteem or just being a doormat. But the source defines humility in a much more active, challenging way. It defines it as the willingness to consciously set aside your own personal plans, your own logic, and your comfort zones in order to accept divine inspiration.
Which is incredibly difficult. I mean, we are wired to love our plans. We spend all our energy building our comfort zones.
We really do. And the text shares some powerful examples of people who had to abandon their own logic to experience real spiritual growth.
Like the naval officer.
Yes. It mentions a naval officer who had his entire career trajectory meticulously mapped out, and also individuals who were really hesitant to leave their lives to serve missions. Their lives only truly opened up after they stepped out of their carefully constructed comfort zones and followed spiritual promptings.
They had to actually submit their will to God.
Right, which requires immense vulnerability.
So the daily training exercise the text pairs with this concept is honestly brilliant in its simplicity. Before you even begin to plan your day, like before you open your calendar or check your email, you ask a single question. Lord, what do you want me to do today?
But the crucial half of that exercise isn't just asking the question.
No, it's the follow-through.
Exactly. It's the commitment that when an unexpected thought comes to your mind, you have the courage to act on it. Trusting it is a prompting from the Spirit.
Okay, let me push back on this for a second. Human brains are incredibly noisy. If I wake up and ask, what should I do today? And my brain suddenly says, go buy a donut. How do I know that's not just my own subconscious desire? Isn't there a huge risk of confirmation bias here?
That is a great point. And it's the exact tension the source is addressing when it defines humility as setting aside your own comfort.
Ah, I see.
Right? If the thought that pops into your head is self-serving or merely convenient, it might just be the noise of your own brain.
Go buy a donut is probably just me.
Probably. But if the thought pushes you to reach out to someone you've been avoiding, or prompts you to apologize, or asks you to sacrifice your time for a neighbor, if it requires you to set aside your personal itinerary for a higher good, That is where you trust the prompting.
It reminds me of the mechanics of using a GPS. You type in your destination, you start driving, and suddenly the voice says, rerouting, turn left in 100 feet.
And you have a choice in that moment.
You do. You can stubbornly stick to the route you thought was best, or you can trust that the GPS is viewing the map from a satellite perspective. It sees a massive traffic jam 2 miles ahead that you cannot see from the ground. But for the GPS to work, you have to actually turn the wheel. You have to accept the reroute.
I love that analogy. By starting your morning asking to be rerouted, you are fundamentally breaking that highway hypnosis we talked about earlier. You are opening a conscious channel for divine guidance, rather than just white-knuckling your own itinerary.
But having an open mindset is only half the equation, right? If you ask the GPS for directions, you still have to put the car in drive. The source insists that once you ask for guidance, you have to back up your prayers with immediate, tangible action.
Because prayer is not a passive wish list. It is not sending an email to the universe and waiting for a package to miraculously appear on your porch.
Right.
The text is very clear that prayer must be accompanied by the physical, human actions required to receive God's blessings.
The source material gives 2 really vivid examples of this partnership between divine help and human sweat. First, on a grand, epic scale, it mentions the ancient Jaredites.
Right. For those unfamiliar, they are a group from scriptural history who were tasked with building literal barges for a massive, seemingly impossible ocean voyage to a promised land.
They couldn't just pray for a bridge to appear.
Right.
They had to pray, and then they had to go chop wood, melt down ore, and build the vessels. It required extreme human effort. And then, on a more modern, relatable scale, the text shares a story of a woman named Hannah praying for the money to secure a passport.
And in Hannah's case, she didn't just kneel by her bed and wait for cash to fall from the ceiling. She prayed for the means, and then she went to work. She filled out the forms. She looked for opportunity.
Put in the effort.
Exactly. Prayer and action are mutually complementary forces. Your actions prove your faith, and your prayers guide your actions toward righteousness.
So the practical application for this is the second daily exercise, is to literally integrate your prayers into your daily to-do list. After praying about a concern or a goal, you ask yourself, what physical steps should I take today to help bring about the answer to this prayer? And then you write that action down right next to buy groceries and pick up dry cleaning.
It forces the spiritual right into the tangible world.
I have to admit, though, my initial reaction to this was a bit skeptical.
Really? How come?
Well, prayer is supposed to be this transcendent, sacred connection with the divine. Turning it into a corporate to-do list feels almost transactional, like we are trying to optimize our spirituality the way a tech CEO optimizes their morning routine.
I totally get that. It is a natural reaction to feel protective of the sacredness of prayer. But look at the specific example the source material provides for this exercise.
Okay.
The action item on the to-do list isn't achieve enlightenment or build an ark. The example given is hum a song for a child.
Hum a song for a child.
Yeah.
Wow, that completely changed the context.
It really does. It grounds the lofty spiritual ideal in the deeply practical, mundane moments of like a Tuesday afternoon. We tend to build this artificial, impenetrable wall between our spiritual life on the weekend and our real life during the week.
Oh, absolutely.
By putting a gentle, spirit-driven prompt on your to-do list, you are demolishing that wall. You are preventing prayer from ending as just a collection of nice words.
Okay, so we have recalibrated the internal compass. We are waking up, humbly asking for the reroute, and we are turning our prayers into concrete actions. But if we stop there, there's a hard ceiling on our growth.
Right. The source material argues forcefully that you cannot build true spiritual capacity in a vacuum. We have to shift our focus outward.
Because a solitary spiritual life eventually becomes a stagnant one.
Precisely. To achieve actual spiritual power, the text points us toward our community and toward deeper, rigorous learning.
Let's look at the community aspect first. The text points out that spiritual strength increases exponentially when you serve others. It shares 2 beautiful stories. A group of friends who unite to fast and pray for a friend struggling with severe depression, and a grandmother who receives a prompting to go and serve someone in need.
Those stories illustrate a profound principle taught by Joseph Smith, an early religious leader and prophet, which the text highlights.
What was the principle?
He taught that reaching out and gently watching over people obviously comforts their hearts, but the hidden mechanism is that it simultaneously empowers and enlarges our own hearts.
I want to dig into the psychology of that. Why does trying to bring a miracle into someone else's life fix our own spiritual deficit? If I am exhausted and depleted, how does spending energy on someone else recharge my battery?
Well, think about what happens to the human brain when we are suffering or anxious. We go into survival mode. Our vision narrows. We begin to ruminate, looping endlessly on our own problems, our own lack, our own pain.
It's like a spiral.
Exactly. It creates a neurological and spiritual echo chamber. Service is the mechanism that breaks that rumination cycle.
Oh, wow.
When you actively try to lift someone else, like those friends rallying around the person with depression, your brain is forced to look outward.
Yeah.
You create the mental and spiritual space for peace to actually enter. It cultivates a genuine, pure love that pulls you out of your own selfishness.
The weekly goal the text suggests for this is simply be someone's angel. Every week, you actively look for an opportunity to be an angel for someone, and it doesn't require a massive, life-altering intervention.
Not at all. It is the consistency of the awareness, not the grandiosity of the gesture. Being someone's angel might just be speaking a kind word to a coworker who looks overwhelmed, or writing a simple, unexpected thank you note.
You are training your brain to scan your environment for people who need a lift, rather than just scanning for threats to yourself. But while we are turning outward to lift others, the text warns that we also need an anchor to make sure we don't get lost in the chaos of the world ourselves. We need deep study of scriptures and modern revelation. And here's where it gets really interesting. The text uses the metaphor of the scriptures acting as an iron rod.
A rod of iron that guides people safely through blinding, dark mists.
It is a promise that if you are earnestly studying these teachings, you will find your way, even when the cultural or personal weather around you is completely disorienting.
Let's break down the physics of that metaphor because I think it's brilliant. Think about why an iron rod is useful in a dense fog. It doesn't magically clear the fog away. It doesn't provide you with a topographical map of the area.
Right, it doesn't change the environment.
It simply provides a fixed, tactile anchor so that no matter how disoriented your vision gets, your hands know exactly which way is forward. And the Spirit illuminates our minds through those fixed anchors. Listening to modern prophets and studying ancient texts helps us recognize personal truth amid the noise. But, and this is key, the daily training exercise for this isn't simply read a chapter a day.
No, the text pushes for a much deeper cognitive engagement. The exercise is, when you read the scriptures, don't just drag a yellow highlighter across a nice-sounding verse. You have to explicitly write down why that specific passage is important to you personally.
Because asking why is the ultimate cognitive trigger.
How so?
Well, when you just read or highlight, you remain a passive consumer of historical texts. You're just acknowledging that someone thousands of years ago had a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
But the moment you force your brain to articulate why it matters to your life, your struggles, or your family today, you become an active participant.
You are building a bridge between antiquity and your current reality.
Exactly. The source notes that this specific practice turns scripture study into a source of personal revelation. It anchors abstract doctrine to your lived, emotional experience. The Spirit pours out generously on a mind that isn't just skimming, but is actively trying to synthesize and learn.
It's the difference between reading a recipe book on the couch and actually standing in the kitchen chopping onions. You have to internalize the material.
That's a great way to put it.
So we've built a pretty robust system here. We have humility, active prayer, outward service, and deep personalized study. But we have to face reality. Life is inherently difficult. Inevitable adversity hits. We get exhausted, our hearts break, and our motivation to maintain these habits completely plummets.
And that is the crucial pivot point of this entire framework. Enthusiasm is a finite resource. Hardship will happen, which is why the final concept acts as the sustaining anchor for all the other practices.
It centers on maintaining gratitude and a resilient attitude. The text shares an incredible quote from President Thomas S. Monson. You can't change the wind, but you can adjust your sails.
We spend a tragic amount of our lives exhausted because we are trying to blow against the wind.
Oh, definitely.
We try to dictate the weather. We try to control circumstances, illnesses, or the actions of other people that are fundamentally out of our control.
The text points out that our actual lived experience is largely determined by our attitudes, not our circumstances. Being grateful for small daily blessings and choosing to stay quiet before God, regardless of the hurricane outside, brings immense peace.
The text describes this positive, grateful attitude as the fertile soil necessary for receiving the Spirit. Think about the opposite. If your mind is consumed by bitterness about the wind or paralyzed by anxiety about the storm, The soil of your mind is toxic.
Wow, toxic soil.
Right. Spiritual promptings, those gentle reroutes we talked about earlier, cannot take root in toxic soil. Gratitude actively prepares the ground of your mind to receive divine guidance.
So how do we practically cultivate that fertile soil when we are in the middle of a storm?
The text gives us two concrete methods. First, the 3 gratitudes. Before you go to sleep every night, you force yourself to recall 3 good things that happened that day, and you offer a prayer of thanks for them.
This is a powerful psychological reset. It forces your brain to scan the past 24 hours for the positive, ensuring you end your day on a note of abundance rather than cataloging everything that went wrong.
The second method is for when you are taking on water in the middle of the adversity. When the storm hits, you actively repeat the mantra out loud, "I can adjust my sails." And then you ask yourself a very specific question. What can I learn from this current struggle?
That phrase, "I can adjust my sails," is a profound reclamation of human agency. It frees you from the paralysis of despair. It doesn't, toxic positivity the situation. It acknowledges that the storm might be terrifying.
Right. It doesn't deny the reality of the pain. Exactly.
Mm.
But it affirms that your response to the storm is entirely within your control. It helps you recognize God's mercy even in the darkness, bringing peace to a troubled heart.
So we have journeyed through an entire tactical playbook for spiritual resilience. From the internal shifts of humility to the outward connections of service and study, all the way to the sustaining mindset of gratitude. What does this all mean for you listening right now?
Well, the conclusion of the source text reminds us that deep spiritual growth relies on consistent, everyday habits. It is not built on fleeting weekend enthusiasm.
But the source offers a very wise, incredibly vital caveat at the very end. The challenge is absolutely not to wake up tomorrow morning and try to perfectly execute all 5 of these exercises.
That is a guaranteed recipe for burnout and guilt.
For sure.
The challenge given is to pick just one.
Just one.
Choose a single exercise to implement with dedication this week. Whether it is waking up and asking for the daily reroute, adding one tangible prayer action to your to-do list, finding a way to be an angel for a coworker, writing down the why during your study time, or practicing the 3 gratitudes before bed. Just one deliberate habit to invite more of the Spirit's power into your life.
Taking the keys off the dashboard, turning off the highway hypnosis, and actively driving.
Exactly.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. We have spent all this time analyzing how to adopt new, deliberate practices to consciously adjust our sails and navigate through the dark mists. But if you take a hard, honest look at your daily routines right now, what is the one unconscious default habit you currently have that is actively steering your ship right back into the dark without you even realizing it?
That is a powerful question to carry with you today.